today's reading lesson, I want to talk to you a little bit more about predictions. Now remember, in our last lesson, I asked you to make a prediction and then think about if your prediction was correct or if you were surprised by what happened. So let me go into a little bit more detail. We make predictions all the time. We even make predictions in movies. So have you ever been watching a movie and you think you know what's going to happen and then at the end you're super surprised? I felt that way when I was watching Toy Story 3, which is one of my favorite movies. At the end, Andy is all grown up, right? He's the one who has all the toys. He has Woody, he has Buzz Lightyear, and he's an older man now, so he doesn't need his toys anymore. And at the end, I thought that he was going to throw the toys away because he really didn't seem to care about them anymore. But he ended up giving them to a little girl who really wanted to play with them. It's kind of a sad ending, but it was a big surprise to me because my prediction was not that he was going to give his toys away to a little girl. As for reading books, I don't want you to just make predictions. I want you to think about your prediction and confirm if it was right or did it surprise you? Did the character do something that you didn't think they were going to do? When you stop and predict what the character might do next, it's important that you keep reading to check your prediction. Most of the time your prediction will be right, but sometimes you might be surprised. Those are my favorite parts of reading stories. That is when you'll want to ask yourself, why would this character do that? Why would they respond that way? So our learning target for today is I can use what I know to guess what the character will do next. So let's talk a little bit about what happened in the chapters so far. So Mrs. P decided that the students had to have buddies for the field trip. And Franny really wanted to be partners with someone. What was his name? Elliot, right? That's her best friend's name. So she wanted to be partners with him. Of course, anyone would want to be partners with their best friend. But Mrs. P partnered her up with a different girl. And do you guys remember the name of this girl? She had a very interesting name and she loved to read books. Millicent. Franny was partnered with Millicent, and Franny and Elliot were sending notes back and forth to each other. This made Millicent feel kind of weird. Maybe she felt like Franny didn't want to be partners with her because she wanted to be partners with Elliot so bad. In chapter 5, Franny's parents have their best friends over for dinner, the Wilsons, right? Franny says, oh, I like them because they talk to me like I'm a grown-up, right? Franny wants to be this grown-up. She likes using grown-up words. She wants to be just like a grown-up. The parents end up talking about resumes and talking about jobs. And Franny says, what's a resume? And her dad says that he has these resumes in his briefcase. So she brings him the briefcase and she asks if she can borrow the briefcase. And her dad says yes. And I asked you to make a prediction. What do you think Franny's going to do with the briefcases? Knowing what you know about her and offices and papers and water, what do you think would happen next? So let's keep reading and find out if your prediction was right or if you're going to be surprised. After dinner, I sat at my desk and pulled out my nicest paper. If I brought my resume with me to the radio station visit, then certainly I could get a job. And if I brought business cards like the ones my dad has, then they may want to give me a job. Business cards are for leaving your phone number and email address with other business people. If you have a card, then nobody has to go looking for a pen and paper. My dad once showed me how he brings them to meetings and leaves them on the table, all spread out like a fan. I found a very serious pen that did not have an eraser, and I looked at the resume from my dad in order to write mine. I carefully put down all of my jobs. Table cleaner, temperature taker, mustard sniffer. When I was done, I put it in my dad's old briefcase, which I found in the basement, along with some other workerish things like paper clips, a legal pad, an old cell phone, and an old pair of glasses with the lenses missing. And when I finished that, I cut up an empty Kleenex box and made my business cards that said, Mrs. Frankly B. Miller, radio show host, Mrs. Frankly B. at millers.com. I put those in my briefcase as well. I was so excited I almost couldn't fall asleep that night. I knew that if they liked my resume and business card at the radio station, there was a chance they'd give me a job. Even though Millicent was also my special buddy for the bus, the ride to the radio station was still fun. Everyone was so excited that we filled the air up with extra loud chattiness. I could tell that Mrs. P was happy too. For instance of what I mean is that she led us in a round of my favorite clapping song. Double, double this, double, double that, double this, double that, double, double this, that. Before my clapping hands even knew it, we were at the most professional radio station building I've ever seen. On the street, we lined up with our special buddies, and then when Mrs. Pellington said we could, we rounded inside the building using a revolving door. Inside, there were lots of people rushing around. Elliot's mouth dropped off his entire face. He pointed. "You are not going to believe this." I followed his finger. There was a little store with at least 110 shelves of candy and gum. I had to work there. I never knew work buildings had places to buy candy. For breakfast! Even Millicent looked up from her book to see all the deliciousness. And Elizabeth seemed really excited too. Her smile wasn't nearly as big as mine or Elliot's, but I'm really smart about amounts of excitement, so I knew she was happy. But then, you will not even believe the rest. It is a scientific fact that, 1, there were turnstiles inside. Do you guys know what turnstiles are? Those are like the little gates that you go into. If you ever go to like a sports game, you might have to go into some turnstiles, but they're the little round things that as you walk through, they spin. And those are there so that only one person at a time can walk through. 2, we had to get our picture taken. 3, the picture was put on a special real-life professional pass. 4, that. 5, we. 6, got. 7, 2, 8, keep. I almost hyperventilated from the excitement of it all. I held on really tightly to the pass, even though it was fastened to the necklace made of tiny little silver balls. I kept looking at the pass, and every time I saw my face on it, my heart started thumping extra hard. Then we got in a line, and a very nice lady handed out white stickers for name tags. We took turns waiting for the magic marker, which gave me time to think. When it was my turn, I very carefully wrote my name in the neatest letters my hand could make. Mrs. Frankly B. Miller. When it was Millicent's turn, Elliot tapped her on the shoulder to get her to stop reading. His tap said, I wish Franny's buddy. Then we went through the turnstiles in the lobby to the bank of elevators. There were 8 elevators there, just like Chester Mall. When I looked over at Elliot, he sent me big, buggy eyes, which meant he was also hyperventilating. When we got into the elevator, Mrs. Pellington pressed 16, and that's when I knew how lucky a day this would be. My very luckiest number in the universe is 7, and 1 plus 6 equals 7. When the doors opened, we could hear the Sandy Sanders Show over the loudspeaker. There was a Michelin framed posters on the wall, and one of them read, The Sandy Sanders Show. I imagined another poster right next to it that read, The Frankly B. Miller Show. When Mrs. Pellington told us to hold our hands with our buddy, Elliot looked back at me with sad eyes. Millicent took my hand, but I could tell she wished there was a book. A lady who sat behind a big round desk pointed us to a waiting room with lots of radio magazines. There was a bowl of mints on the table, which Mrs. Pellington quickly took away. That's when I pulled out 3 business cards from my briefcase and fanned them around where the candy had been. Elliot looked very impressed. So did the other kids in my class. Drew asked me if he could have one, but he didn't have a job to give me one, so I said no. When Mrs. P came back, she gave the longest, most boringest speech in the entire universe. And the worst part was that she looked at me the whole time. As she talked, I realized that I had to go to the bathroom. I wanted to hold it in as long as possible because that felt like something an adult would do. But after a while, I wasn't so sure how adults did this thing because it was getting very hard to sit still. I jittered my knees, I crossed my legs, I stood up, and I sat back down. I stood up again. Finally, Mrs. Pellington said, Franny, what on earth is going on with you? Now was my chance to tell her, but I was too embarrassed to say it in front of my whole class. My legs are very excited, I said. Well, sit back down, please. You can stand when the tour guide gets here, which should be any minute. I sat back down and realized right then that I was not adult in the holding in way. I needed to get Mrs. Pellington alone so I could tell her this in a whisper. So boys and girls, I'm going to stop reading there. And we're going to continue reading chapter 7 on Monday, but I want you to make another prediction. Franny really has to go to the bathroom, right? And she is kind of in the middle where she wants to get Mrs. P's attention so she could go to the bathroom, but the tour guide is about to start. So what do you think she's going to do? Let's take a look back at our learning target for today. I can use what I know to guess what the character will do next. I hope you have a wonderful day, stay safe and healthy, and I will see you soon.